Welcome to Verses and Visions Creative Conversations, where creativity and purpose meet to inspire and uplift. I'm Cassidy Beck, your host, here to explore the stories of artists, dreamers, and changemakers who are walking in faith and using their unique gifts to make a difference. Each episode is a reminder that your vision, paired with God's purpose, can transform the world around you. Let's get started and spark some inspiration together.
At Verses and Visions, we're grateful for partners who support creativity, faith, and meaningful conversations. We're pleased to share a message from one of them.
Hey friends, before we jump into today's conversation, I've been thinking about those small, meaningful things that bring us together. For me, that's often sharing a bottle from my family's premium soda company, Soda Beers. Whether it's crisp ginger beer, smooth butterscotch beer, classic root beer, original apple beer, or apple beer 5, our low-calorie twist, each flavor is a small little reminder of home and of the simple joys. Okay, now let's dive in. I am so delighted to be welcoming Holly. Welcome, Holly.
Thank you so much, Cassidy. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I'm excited because you are a co-owner of Mary Robin, and I've talked to your other owner, your sister. So I'm very delighted to get to know you better and to further our conversation today.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So let me tell our listeners a little bit more about Holly. Holly Kolb currently serves as a conference manager for LDS PMA. She also teaches research, rhetoric, and writing at BYU and UVU. In 2022, Holly and her sister Jane Ann founded Mary Robin Publishing, where Holly works with authors as a coach and editor to help their manuscript come to life. Holly and her husband Marcus are the lucky parents of 2 adorable children. When Holly isn't teaching in Utah, she lives in Germany with her family near the Alps. Holly is an avid walker and a reader. She enjoys audiobooks, so she could do both at the same time. Tell me something that you've read or listened to that you can't stop thinking about, and why do you think it stuck with you?
I finished it about a week ago or so, is Theo of Golden by Alan Levi. And I absolutely loved that book. My entire experience with it, I knew nothing about it going into it, and then was just completely delighted. I laughed, I cried, and those things don't come easily for me. With as much as I read, I just felt very connected to the characters and the story, and it was very wholesome. And then as I learned more about the author and the story later on, I learned that it was initially self-published, and I was seeing it everywhere. So I looked a little bit more into that. And so back in 2023, Alan Levi self-published the book, and it didn't go through like professional channels, like traditional publishing channels. But since that, so it sold 170,000 copies. And then it was picked up by a traditional publisher. And I work with self-published authors and people, who are not interested in the traditional publishing track for a variety of reasons. And to be able to see something that I resonated with so much, that had that much success and then was acquired by a traditional publisher, was just amazing to me. And then it turned out the author actually went to my alma mater. But the book was it was one of those books that makes you feel better about life and about people and connecting with other people. The main character, he writes letters, and that's always something that I've connected with. I also read The Correspondent recently, and it just filled that desire in me to like physically write letters to people. And so I came away wanting to do things that I love and am passionate about. And I was looking at other people differently, trying to see them through Theo's eyes. And I've been able to have conversations with other people who have read the book that just have been very meaningful to me, and like how we can be better people and spreading, the light of Christ. And it just, revisit how the state of the world, because that can be pretty dark, and just kind of reminds you of the goodness in people.
So I am curious, you mentioned that you went to the University of Edinburgh, and you also spend your time in near the Alps.
Yeah, there are lots of stories attached to that. So I did a master's degree at the University of Edinburgh before I got married. And when I got married was when I moved to Germany. My husband is from Germany. And so when we got married, I moved over there, and so I lived near his family by the Alps. So I do have an international history, but I don't live in both places at the same time. But yeah, so that's kind of the very short version of those stories.
That's so incredible. It really does kind of sound like a novel. It's awesome. Tell me a little bit about how living internationally changes your perspectives, like on life and creativity.
Yeah, living internationally has been a wild ride. I've always wanted to live in the UK specifically. I found this program in Edinburgh that I was very passionate about, book history, and was very excited to go. And I felt like I was living out a dream that I had had for a really long time. And as I got there, the logistics and the reality of living in a foreign country became very apparent, and it was a really big challenge for the first little bit. And then once I made friends and was more involved in the program and in the different things that were happening there, I felt more at home. And it gave me the courage to then make an even bigger step and farther step away from home, to be able to get married to my now husband and move to Germany. And it definitely, that presented even more challenges. I feel like it was the bravest thing I've ever done, and has just changed me as a person. I had read stories about immigrants, and I had read stories of people who had felt othered and different and didn't really feel like they belonged, and things like that. But to actually experience it on my own has been a very humbling experience and has made me feel very connected with people who feel that way, like whether it's where they live or just a period of their life. It is as romantic and as enchanting as it sounds in so many ways, but there's a lot else that goes into it, that having to learn a new language for one. And I just feel for everybody who lives somewhere that they where it's not their native tongue, because it's like nobody knows how funny you are, nobody knows how smart you are in your native language. And so having to adjust like my own identity and things that I have valued about myself and felt like ways I could express myself, it just is on a completely different plane in a different country, and particularly in Germany, where I live now, in a new language. I've had to find smaller and like humbler ways of expressing myself and being creative. My world has expanded in a lot of ways, but in some ways it's really narrowed quite a bit, because the people that I can relate to and that I can talk to are definitely different than in my home here in Utah. And the amount of courage it takes, and the kind of, when there's a language barrier, there's just only a certain amount that you can really express to try to get your main message across. Not a message the best worded, or that really showcases your personality, or it's like it's not necessarily the best version of myself or what I'd want to be communicating with people, but it's like what's the bare minimum in a lot of contexts. And that has it's just changed the way that I move about in the world, and it's changed who I notice around me, and who is a little quieter, and who maybe doesn't feel like they belong, or they're feeling like a sense of estrangement from things that are familiar to them. It's changed my ability to certainly empathize with a lot of people. I made a really good friend when we were living near the border of Denmark, and she's from Brazil and lives in Denmark now. And I didn't imagine I'd have, in my former life, I wouldn't have thought that I had a lot in common. We have very different personalities and very different interests. And there's not a lot that would have connected us outside of being members of the church. But I knew, and we could speak in a language just of lived experience that I had not been able to really articulate to anybody, like the sense of isolation, the sense of like being afraid to talk to anybody, and then having to like work through that, and the amount of courage it takes to just step outside of your door and to talk to anybody, to ask where anything is, like being able to overcome that and then find a place. It takes a long time. It's a very slow process, and it can be very discouraging sometimes, but it's helped me connect with people and make friendships that I don't think I would have ever been able to really do at that level beforehand. So creatively, it's been that challenge has presented opportunities, I think, and it's been very valuable to me.
I feel like it's so interesting because I think in my experience with travel is very different, because I haven't like tried to stay long term at a, so I went to Australia for a time, but there wasn't a language barrier. I feel like my travel experience has been very different. And for me, one of the main things that I love about traveling is that it shows just how similar we are to each other.
Yeah.
And I guess how kind of like little the world could be. But I feel like one of the things that I hear you saying is how lonely it was as you were trying to, and I totally understand with what you're saying, because that language, like you're not able to communicate or articulate like these wonderful deep thoughts that you have, but that there's just this barrier that's very difficult to get through. I totally understand that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I feel like I knew what it felt like to be lonely before. Like I certainly had experienced that before, but it was just at a different level, and it was for a duration of time that I also had very little control over changing much of my context and the situation that I was in. I totally agree with you that like the world does feel a lot smaller. Like when you just expand your worldview and have different experiences and relate and make friends with people, it's amazing how it's kind of a contradiction that as your world expands, you also just realize how much you have in common with other people. But the more you get into it too, I just think that it's not one or the other, it's both. That
Mm.
there are the things that you realize that really separate you from somebody else, and you have to be really creative in finding ways to connect and interact with people in a way that feels genuine and like authentic to you. And sometimes it just takes longer than a conversation where there's just a lot more shared history and context and things like that, in your wherever home is for you. But I think it's invaluable to have those experiences that expand and reshape and try the assumptions you have about the world, the assumptions you have about other cultures and people, because people are just amazing and will always surprise you. And yeah, I learned loneliness at a different level that I certainly didn't want for myself. And that wasn't exactly how I had hoped that things would play out for a long time. But I have also, as I, look at it and try to think about what I've gained from it, like I can answer those questions too. I feel like there has been a lot that I've gained, and things that I wouldn't give up even for a life of more comfort, I suppose. But that's not really what we're asked to do in life. And I had never really shied away from a challenge. And yet this was one that I sort of thought I knew what I was getting into and just sort of took the plunge. But I learned what it feels like to be lonely, and what it feels like to just be cut off from home and from a support system. And I related to different kinds of people that I thought that I'd been able to do before. So yeah.
I totally agree. You were talking about how like traveling and those things help you challenge your assumptions about like others and probably about yourself too, because you didn't know what you were capable of doing until you had to go through some extremely difficult things. That being said, you also currently wear a lot of different hats right now as a conference manager, a teacher, an editor, a publisher, and a mom. So I'm curious, when you zoom out, what thread do you see that connects all of these different roles for you?
That's a good question. I don't think it's like very obvious from the outset. I've just sort of taken roles as they've presented themselves, but and that have aligned with my values and things that I feel like my gifts. But I would say the thread that I see through really all of them is I'm less of an idea generator. I don't necessarily feel as passionate as some people that I interact with about the generation, like that initial creation. But I'm like a facilitator. I really thrive in having something to work with and then molding it to meet different goals. And so I'm like a logistics person, and I like the production of something really resonates with me. And I feel like where my gifts are best suited is having something in my hands that, has been born elsewhere, theoretically speaking, and then shaping it into something that meets goals for the creator. And so whether that's with my children, as I've become a mother, they do not come as a blank slate. And both of my kids are extremely different. And although there's a lot of creativity involved in being a mom and idea generation, certainly. But I do feel like I am trying to mold and shape them and teach them in ways that to be the kind of people that I see their potential and who I think the Heavenly Father would want them to be. But also just like being delighted and amazed in how they already come. Like it's just amazing all of the goodness that's wired into them already, and discovering that, nurturing that, and shaping them towards like somebody who I think is a good person, and hopefully develops a testimony of Christ, and all of the things that I want for them. And then of course as an editor, I do the same thing. Like I get the manuscript and I get to help shape it into something that is better than what it was, and doesn't necessarily mean that perfection is attainable or whatever that means to anybody, but certainly helping somebody see some of the holes that just are not apparent in the initial creative process, and shaping it into something that is like a finished product and the final goal. As a conference manager and as a teacher as well, again, just I'm the logistics person helping make somebody else's vision a reality. And I get a lot of satisfaction out of that because I get to work with people, and I get to help people realize something that maybe they couldn't even imagine for themselves, having it be like bigger and better and like more creative and more true to what they want it to be, whether that's a conference or a student paper or a manuscript. Yeah, I would say that that's sort of where my spiritual gifts have been guiding me, is in that like facilitator role.
What a wonderful skill set to be able to see where someone is right now, but also but like to be able to also simultaneously see the potential, and to have the knowledge how to get where they are right now and then have them lead them towards that potential. So did you feel like you always like this was the path that you knew that your life was going to take, or has this kind of unfolded for you in surprising ways?
I've definitely been surprised. As I look back on it, it's like, oh, some of it makes sense, but a lot of it, certainly with my international moves, and I can go into more detail about those, but I never expected to be living in Germany. I initially I thought I was going to be a physician for a long time, and was on that path like through middle school and into high school, and then learned that I get faint with different with blood and different things that medical people have to deal with all the time. And I thought, okay, maybe that's not the right path for me. And then I've always been interested in international things. And so I was studying international relations for a hot minute when I went to university. But then I realized while I was studying those things that what I really wanted to be studying was English literature, because I have always been drawn to books and connected with stories, and my English classes were my favorites and what got me really excited. And I thought, well, I could study international relations, or I could do something where I'm genuinely excited about going to school every day and doing the homework and just really invested. So I switched to English in my freshman year and studied that way. And that led me on a very natural path toward what I think is natural, toward Britain, and being in Britain, spending a lot of time there. I was able to have some amazing experiences on study abroad and doing an internship in the UK. And so I had sort of been planning and hoped my life would go in that direction. And eventually my book history degree got me there, and I was living there for a year. And then my life took a really sharp pivot as I had met my husband actually in Utah, and then we ended up getting married, and it was the pandemic. And so that shifted a lot, that changed a lot of our plans. And I ended up in Germany, and I had studied beforehand Russian, and I served my mission in Russia. And so England and Russia, those were kind of my international experiences and what I felt comfortable with. And then Germany sort of presented itself as this is my future now. And that's been it was a big adjustment, and trying to find my footing and try to find my identity and things. But it's definitely life, as it does for everybody, presents surprises, and that both delight and challenge, and has definitely changed my course. But I will say the like Mary Robin Publishing was born out of a very kind of natural, well, it was born from my English interests, like my interest in books and my interest in authors, and the fact that really, since I can remember in middle school, people have been asking me to give them feedback on their papers and on their novels that they've been working on. And people have always looked to me to provide critical but useful feedback and to be encouraging in that part of their creative endeavors. And so when that opportunity presented itself, it just fell in our laps. I'm sure that Janine probably talked about that, but that seemed like it was a natural and exciting next step to formulate and to bring those skills and interests like into the foreplay again. So foreground, I should
One
say.
of the things that is sound so interesting to me, because you were talking about like your interest in international, like living in international relations, and your talent and desire for literature kind of brought you back to this world. But like your life experience has been one of international experiences. And so that has kind of come in, albeit in a different way that maybe you didn't see coming, but like through Russia, through UK, through Germany and America, you have definitely had an international like life experience. And how interesting, because I feel like it sounds like you have a lot of different talents, and there were some things that you're like, okay, you can't do everything, and so you have to kind of narrow it down, but that your life was able to provide these opportunities to do something that you were interested in.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I've always been drawn to international, just different people, right? And traveling and different cultures and trying to understand more about the world that way and different aspects of that. But yeah, I'm very grateful that I very much feel that Heavenly Father has been a part of, I've had to kind of make what I can with them. And in some ways that came very naturally and was very exciting. In other ways, as I've said, it was a challenge. But I am grateful that there have been opportunities to kind of bring those talents together and have it make sense. And yeah, I do believe, it sounds like I wear a lot of hats. I do. And right now I'm wearing a lot of them, but I do believe that you have to put your eggs in a basket at some point. Like there are certain things that you can do at one point, and I'm talking about my whole life, like the last decade of my life, right? But I'm never doing any, like all of those things at the same time. And while like I'm a mom always, like there are certain things that I've had to give up in my role as mother, and then there are things that I have to give up when I'm editing, like to pull back and to give in different kinds of roles and to separate time and stages and be like, okay, this is when I can focus on one aspect of life that, you know, fills my soul and makes me, and where I feel passionate about it. But other times I'm not able to do that. And that's okay, because I'm focusing on something else. And I think there's a really big challenge for any creator and any people who wear multiple hats to feel good and to feel confident. And I struggle with this myself, to feel confident when they're having to give up something that they value and that fills them for something else that's good. It's like having to choose between goods all the time. And I think that that's something that a lot of people can relate to, and just applies in a lot of, whether that situation is at home, you know, in your familiar area, or where life takes you somewhere that you didn't expect. There are certain things you have to give up and compromises you have to make. Even just life as a married person you have to do that all the time for the good of a larger vision, for the good of the family, for the good of the marriage, or for the good of your career, whatever those roles look like. I don't want to say there's a balance, but I think that there's a constant weighing of priorities and figuring out, okay, this is when I can dedicate my time to this, and then I need to set that aside so that I can dedicate my time to something else. And sometimes that means taking the time to dedicate to your health and resting and allowing your body to recuperate, or your mind to recuperate after a challenge. I think it takes a lot of flexibility and openness with yourself to know, am I giving what I can give in this role right now? It doesn't need to be everything. I don't need to be giving 100%, because we're asked to do a lot of different things, you know, but am I doing what I can? And then being able to move on to something else, and trusting God that he's going to like make up the difference and make it okay as you answer his call to do different things.
We'll return to today's conversation in just a moment.
You know how much I love sharing stories that inspire faith and hope. I'm excited to tell you about my new children's book, Sheep Chronicles Baptism. It's about Joshua, a curious boy with big questions about baptism, and the parable of a lost sheep named Shannon, shared by his wise grandpa. It's been such a joy to write this story, and I can't wait for you and your family to read it together.
Now, back to the episode.
So one of the things that you're working on right now is that it's kind of like almost a sacred space that you're working with writers, and that you see like they're in between, and that you get to see like kind of the messes that they start with, respectfully, the hot messes
Yeah.
that writers start with, and then that you're coaching them between, and you kind of get to see their story come to life. Has that taught you about courage and vulnerability?
Oh man, I love the writers that I work with. I think that writing is one of the most vulnerable and courageous things that a person can do when you're actually doing it in an honest and genuine way. True writing and vulnerability, I think that's the most rewarding. Like there's nothing really that feels more vulnerable than like giving your writing over to somebody else to critique. Like as an editor, I take that very seriously, that like this is something that somebody may have been working on for the past 10 years, and then I'm saying it can be something else, or it can be something better. And that is a very scary thing, and I know that that's something that a lot of writers deal with. And the sometimes it's imposter syndrome, sometimes it's just not knowing if anybody's going to like it, like, or if they've said the truth, whatever the goal is. And I think that writing is just an incredibly vulnerable and courageous act. And when those things are done at the same, like it's one and the same. Like when you are vulnerable, that is courage. And to try to stay safe, or to try to say something that is going to please everybody, it takes neither vulnerability nor courage. And the best writing resonates with people when you read it. It takes both of those things, to the courage that it takes to be vulnerable. And I know sometimes people believe that it's a weakness, but I think if you've experienced it, like it's very much the opposite. It takes so much courage to put your heart out there and to say something that feels true, and to try to articulate your experience, whether that's in fiction or in poetry or as a personal essay, or whatever, a blog post, whatever the genre is. And the writers I work with have taught me so much about that. And I take that role very seriously, and I'm always so grateful when somebody's willing to share something so close to their heart with me.
So I love that answer. I love your thoughts behind that. And I'm curious, I know that you see, like you work with a lot of authors in various degrees, various stages of their careers. Is there any like common struggle that you see amongst all of them? And if so, what advice would you give, or that you hear yourself repeating over and over?
That's a good one. I think every writer needs encouragement to know that they can do it, and it's possible, and it's worthwhile to tell the truth. One thing that I find myself repeating time and again is understanding genre conventions, which that's not, I mean, that's a very kind of industry thing, but understanding like where do you want your book to sit on a shelf, like next to what other books? And that is often a struggle that authors run into, is in their desire to create something that's authentic to them. It becomes so overwhelming and unruly, and it's doing so many things that, like, to give it focus, or even to make it seem more doable, it's like you need to think back down to like what's the ultimate message, and who is this serving, and what is the genre, like, because other people have done the same thing, like other people have been in your shoes and they have come out with a final product. And so knowing what some of those conventions are to fit your book, and that's not to limit your book, but I very much find, and I say this too, like having some kind of boundaries, it shapes and like brings focus and brings a certain amount of like pressure on the words that you use, and how you say what you say. It gives an, you have to have an audience that you're thinking about, and it really like shapes and forms the writing. I don't think in a way that limits it or makes it less than what it could be, but actually helps fulfill the purpose of what the book really can be. Yeah, I would say I am often encouraging, because a lot of authors struggle with imposter syndrome, and I have read a lot of great writing, and I've read a lot of bad writing, and it's okay wherever it's at. I work with students, for heaven's sakes, and like people just are on all ends of the spectrum, and knowing that like I'm not there to tell you that you're not good enough. I am here to help you meet your own goal for yourself and for your book. So I think Yeah, just reiterating that it is possible, that your story's worthwhile, that I am never gonna, another thing that I always am saying is the publishing industry is bleak, and to have to temper your expectations for what's worth it to you to go through the process of writing a book. If you need to be a best-selling author where millions of people know your name, I am here to temper those expectations, because 99.9999999% of people don't have that experience. And that's okay. And that doesn't mean that your story is not worth telling. Your story is your lead magnet, it's your legacy item. Like, you will actually have something physical that you can share with your friends and family. And when you go and are invited to give a talk, like, you have something you can actually talk about as this like product, this thing that you've done. And so whether or not you become the next J.K. Rowling or whoever it is, like, your story is worthwhile and it's worth telling because it's coming from you, and it's going to be used in a million different ways to bless your life and bless other people's lives. And you have no idea who you'll end up touching. And to be a multimillionaire author shouldn't be the goal of producing this work, because that's not a guarantee. It's almost a guarantee that it won't happen. And so you need to find like your why for doing it that is closer to home and more true really to who you are.
And I feel like one of the things, like as a writer, you want to have this unique thing. You want to have like, you want to say words that have never been put together and in a way that's new. And I hear you saying you yes, do that, but also do it in a way, like in a format that's kind of been like designated, because that helps your audience find you. And I think that that's like a hard, discomfortable thing. Like, but it feels like it would be a disconnect. But I think that you are saying that it's going to help your audience reach and also be able to kind of set the expectation and of what the book is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, knowing who you're writing to, I think, is an essential element of like the creation of the thing. And it helps them find you. It helps them know what to expect in a certain way. Not that they can predict whatever your work is going to be, but setting up those expectations. Like, we go through this experience every time you go to the movie theater or every time you pick up a book. You have certain expectations based on what the cover looks like, based on what, the title, and what you go into it hoping for something, right? Whether it's an experience, cathartic experience of reading somebody's memoir and realizing that you're not alone in the world, that somebody else has been through something similar or harder than you. Like, your audience is going to come to your book with certain, whether it's subconscious or not, like certain hopes for it. And knowing the conventions, knowing the rules of whatever genre you are in, you can break them and you can play with them and you can do it in interesting and surprising ways that will delight and surprise your reader. But it's also going to give them things that are going to be new that they didn't expect, but also like fulfilling those in a certain way, fulfilling the expectation so that they have a satisfying experience with your book. And it doesn't mean that you can't say something in a unique way. I certainly hope, and your reader hopes, that you say it in a new way that's going to make them think differently. But at the same time, if you go into it thinking it's going to be escapist and just a nice, lovely beach read, and then it ends up being a horror flick or something, like, you've had this experience at the movie theater, right? Where it's like, oh, well, that wasn't what I was hoping for. But you've also had the experience where you go in and you were like, I had absolutely no idea that's what I needed. But you went in with certain expectations, and producers or the writer, like, they fulfilled it in a certain way, but also like pushed the boundaries because they knew what you were expecting. They knew where they could play, where they could push the boundaries, and what they can kind of turn on its head. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
So, as a conference manager for LDSPMA, I feel like you're shaping experiences for an entire creative community. What do you feel like? What would you like people to feel after they attend the conference?
Oh, yeah. I'm new to this role, as everybody knows. So I'm still kind of finding my footing a little bit, but I really hope that people have an experience at the conference where they first and foremost feel the spirit. I think that more than anything, like, God is a creator and his spirit is creative. And that, I want attenders of the conference to feel the spirit in a way that encourages and expands and surprises them about the work that they're already doing or the work that they're hoping to do. I think the other thing is to have an experience that facilitates conversations with other creators so that you know that you're not alone and you know that there are all of these other people that are in a similar boat to you, but also can help make your creation happen. And it's just the most amazing group of people that come together. And we've got something, there are things that are similar about everybody in there, like probably members of the church. You assume that they're a member of the church and they're a creative, but what that means for any one person is so different. And so there's so much diversity within a seemingly homogenous type of group, but there's so much like value that you can get from being around people who understand where you're coming from, and wherever they're at in their career, they may be way down the road where you're wanting to be, but they've been in your shoes and can help you facilitate your dreams and to learn skills that are necessary for you to be able to do what it is that you're hoping for. I want people to be able to feel the spirit.
I think it really is an incredible conference. And I think like one of the, I guess, effects of COVID is that it kind of has like separated people. And I think one of the things that is the world could benefit from is just gathering and
Yeah.
being together and feeling. I do feel like there's just this creative energy that is there, that is, it is delightful, and it is wonderful to see, to meet people that are trying to do the same thing that you're doing. Can't say enough about this conference. I really like it.
It reminds me that so much of the best literature that's ever come out in certainly in the English language are from like little pods of people that were together that
Hmm.
talked to each other, and they shared ideas. You had the transcendentalists and in New England, Concord, and we read so many of their works, like Louisa May Alcott, and with Little Women, of course, and her dad and Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau. Like they all knew each other, and they were able to do what they did because of that collaborative. And the same thing in the Lake District. You had William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge and Robert Southey, and Beatrix Potter was in a different generation, but just you get all of these people together in one place, and things can happen that just can't happen in isolation.
The another one that I was thinking wasn't like C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien.
Yeah, they were great friends at Oxford. Yeah, there's like a whole Oxford group. Yeah. And that's happened over generations, right? Because that's one thing that a university does is it gets people together who have similar interests or who can speak a similar language, a language of ideas, and you're able to build off of each other. And then those relationships can last your whole life because you were in the same place. I think proximity is like such a blessing for creative endeavors. And so whether it doesn't necessarily have to be physical. If you're meeting with people over Zoom, I have a book club that we've been meeting internationally for like 8 years, but like being together, right, in whatever capacity that means, or finding a book club, finding a writing group that's in your area where you can share the trials, you can share the hardships of what you're dealing with, and also talk about the successes. And a conference like LDS is a great place to come and meet with people that you can speak a similar language with, right?
So, for anyone that maybe like this would be their first conference that they would be attending, what would you like to say to them?
I would say that you're going to miss 100% of the shots you don't take if you don't go. I highly recommend going in person and not being afraid to. I would say give yourself a goal of talking to a certain amount of people that you don't know and just striking up a conversation. That can be really hard. A lot of creatives, a lot of writers in particular, love writing because it's theoretically it's like an isolated activity, and so sometimes it's hard to break out of your comfort zone and just sort of sitting in the back and taking notes and then walking away. But I would say make a goal to talk to 5 people over the 3 days that you don't know and create some connections, and so that you can have the benefit of that idea sharing and the collaboration, because I think the people are the best part of the conference, and the spirit that's there and that is really there to help creatives to produce in the world. And I think it's part of our divine identity to create things. Yeah, I was not sure what to expect my first time, and I was kind of nervous going in. There are so many ways to get involved. And if cost is an issue or something, there are ways to volunteer, and there are things that you can do to participate in the conference and to be involved. I think LDSPMA is particularly good at this, of having so many different kinds of opportunities for people to be involved and participate volunteer in different ways so that, you get to meet different people and feel a part of the community. So yeah, I'd say find your area that resonates with you and volunteer.
Great. For our listeners that are maybe feeling called to create but aren't totally sure where to start, what gentle first step would you have them to take just for this week?
This week, I would tell you to read a book in a genre that you want to write. If you're a writer, to read a book in a genre that you want to write in, to make a list of 3 things that are happening in that book that make it what it is, that you like about it, that resonate with you. Additionally, if you can, I would recommend that you find a podcast either about or of that writer, like that they are speaking if they're alive, or about the author if they've passed on, so that you learn a little bit about their life and where they're coming from, their creative process, or how their legacy has been. But find like one book and then start to understand it as a book, more than just what it gives you or what you like or don't like about it, but like, how is it working as a book? What expectations is it fulfilling? What genre does it fall into? So that you can then kind of see and be inspired to apply some of those principles to your own work.
So, how can people find you? How can we support you?
Oh, that's very kind. Well, so Mary Robin Publishing is my book coaching publishing business with my sister Jane Ann. And so we are at maryrobinpublishing.com. That's Mary, Merry, and then Robin is in the bird, Robin Publishing. And you can email us at maryrobinpublishing@gmail.com. I'm always happy to chat and to talk with people and help them out.
Well, Holly, thank you. This has been so delightful. I love your thoughts. I love your experience. You have such a rich experience. And so I appreciate you coming to share it with us today.
Thank you so much, Cassidy. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for spending time with me today. If you're looking for a family-friendly, refreshing drink, check out Soda Beers, my family's premium soda company. And for a faith-filled story to share with the little ones, don't miss Sheep Chronicles Baptism. Both are available on Amazon. Until next time, keep creating with purpose and faith.